And now it's time for our keynote speaker, backed by popular demand. He's the author of several books about technology and criminality. He did a podcast on the BBC, and same title as his forthcoming book, which is out in a couple of weeks, The Missing Cryptoqueen. Here to give us a sneak preview, please welcome Jamie Bartlett. Oh, there he is.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, thanks very much for coming. Thanks for having me. Has anyone invested all their money in cryptocurrency? Had a good couple of weeks? Yeah, sorry, shouldn't even make a joke about that, should I? Well, the good news is, actually, it's not really good news. It's terrible news that I'm going to tell you the story of a far bigger crypto loss. In fact, probably the biggest ever crypto scam of all time. The OneCoin. I've been studying this for the last 3 years, investigating this incredible story. And what I want to do is try to give you a bit of a flavour for how this scam actually worked, draw out a couple of lessons that I think might be useful for you people in the audience, but also try and look a bit forward about how online crime, I think, is evolving more generally, because that's an area that I've spent a lot of time working on. Okay, let me give you the quick overview of the OneCoin Ponzi scam, for those of you who don't know. So in 2014, Dr. Ruja Ignatova, this brilliant businesswoman, Bulgarian-German, turns up out of nowhere and says, "You've all heard about Bitcoin, but you missed the boat with Bitcoin. It's too late. The price is too high. It's too complicated. It's for geeks and nerds and technologists. But I've got good news for you. I've created a brand new version of Bitcoin. It's smarter, it's quicker, it's easier to use, it's designed for ordinary people. We have a centralized blockchain, which means that we get to kick out all the criminals that are currently using Bitcoin. Would you like to invest? It's very, very cheap right now. It only costs 5 cents to buy one coin, and if the trajectory follows Bitcoin, you're all going to be millionaires." And this thing grew like wildfire. And the reason it grew so quickly, the clever little twist on this, has anyone ever done, you probably haven't, but this like network marketing or multi-level marketing, where you buy some vitamins or shampoo or whatever it is. Tupperware is probably the most famous one of all. And my mother was an Avon lady for a while, so I know all about it. And you buy these products and you sell them to your friends, and then you recruit them so that they can sell to their friends, and you get a little commission, and the thing grows like a giant pyramid. Well, OneCoin was sold through this network marketing or multi-level marketing technique, and the thing went crazy. Within 18 months, OneCoin had reached 175 countries. Approximately 1 million people had invested money in the product. Possibly as much as 4 billion euros by mid-2017. 4 billion euros invested in this crypto coin, OneCoin. And Dr. Ruja is giving these amazing lectures and seminars at increasingly impressive venues, selling out arenas of 3, 5, even 10,000 people who've come to listen to her promise of an amazing financial revolution. So the whole thing seems to be going incredibly well. And the price of these coins that people have been buying is going up and up and up, from 50 cents to €1 to €5 to €20 to €30. And then suddenly, in October 2017, Dr. Ruja gets on a Ryanair flight from Sofia, Bulgaria, to Athens, Greece, and disappears into thin air. And nobody has seen her since. The whole thing, of course, is then unraveling and revealed to be essentially a gigantic, not really a rival to Bitcoin, but maybe a rival to Bernie Madoff investments, a gigantic Ponzi scheme, where the price that she claimed her coin was at was simply fabricated by her back office staff. The blockchain, the magical technology that powered her cryptocurrency, was in fact just a piece of computer script running in the back office that she could manipulate however she wanted. And the whole thing was smoke and mirrors. But 4 billion euros had disappeared along with Dr. Ruja Ignatova. And I've spent 3 years trying to find out where she is. you imagine how frustrating it was when lockdown happened as well? I couldn't even go anywhere. No, she's probably walking around wearing a mask. I wouldn't have even noticed. 1 month ago, actually 3 weeks ago, this happened though. Finally, the German authorities issued an arrest warrant for Dr. Ruja Ignatova, woman on the run, for fraud and money laundering, and she appeared on Europol's most wanted list at last, alongside mafia bosses and Wirecard COOs. There's a €5,000 reward for information that may lead to her arrest. I might tell you where I think she is, by the way, because that has been the whole point of this whole series. But it's kind of irrelevant for what I'm going to tell you now. But it's not the only thing that happened. The US authorities have also been looking for her since October 2017. Conveniently enough, she disappeared just 2 weeks after the US authorities issued a sealed, like a secret indictment for multiple counts of money laundering and fraud. So 2 weeks after that was issued, in secret, she vanished off the face of the earth. Okay. Incredible. Really quite a genius, this woman, and how she actually pulled this off. And I'm just going to give you a couple of key things that made this scam so incredibly successful. I mean, this was, for a while, this was like, she was one of the fastest growing tech companies of all time. It was a unicorn within 18 months from being founded before it all collapsed. And believe it or not, there are still people around the world pushing OneCoin right now. There was an event last week in Thailand with thousands of cheering people talking about this Ponzi scam. Okay. A couple of lessons about how she pulled this off, which I hope would be relevant for everybody. Number one is this is true of all fraudsters and scam artists. The language that's used, the kind of appearance that is given, is pretty much indistinguishable from the real thing. You can't really tell from anything she says that this is a fake. And when you're talking about technology that a lot of people don't really understand, it's very, very easy to cover the cracks with this kind of thing. This is Dr. Ruja at Wembley Arena in mid-2016. 3,000 cheering people talking about the future of money. I'd give you a little sample. But there's no volume on it, so you can't hear what she's saying anyway. So don't worry about that. But you can see, what you can see is how, I mean, cryptocurrency at the time was, Bitcoin was created by a pseudonymous person that nobody knew called Satoshi Nakamoto, and we don't really get who this person is. Dr. Ruja Ignatova standing on stage saying, "Look at me. Look at my $1 million necklace, my amazing clothes, my PhD in law." I'm talking about a global financial revolution, banking the unbanked, using all of the same terminology that legitimate cryptocurrencies were using. The second thing is what's called affinity fraud. Affinity fraud was really important for OneCoin. It's a kind of subgenre of fraud. It is where you take trustworthy brands and simply hope that by associating yourself with them, some of their credibility might rub off on you. And Dr. Ruja Ignatova, there she is. She does have a degree from Oxford University. She does have a PhD in law. She did spend 5 years working at McKinsey, so she's very, very credible as a person. Don't ever think that scam artists aren't equally qualified as you guys, because they really are. They just see the world slightly differently. But what she did was, people don't understand the technology. They're very confused by this blockchain and crypto. So how can they trust it? Well, the best way to do that is to get other people or other brands they trust to be associated with me. So she would, very cleverly, she would often pay to be interviewed. She would pay for a bit of product placement, pay for a bit of sponsorship, and then send that to her marketers around the world who'd be promoting the coins as a kind of way of flashing a little bit of credibility. So here she is in a smaller magazine, a sort of trade magazine called Financial IT, where she's talking about the future of crypto, the future of finance. She uses that as kind of leverage to get somewhere slightly more credible. So then she turns up, we think, on the cover of Forbes magazine. And everyone's thinking, good Lord, this woman is on the cover of the establishment's favorite magazine. Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, these guys are usually the front cover stars. So she must be legitimate, because I don't understand the technology, but I do understand that Forbes would have checked. But what she'd actually done was really clever, because actually what this is a bit of paid placement. It's an advert that looks totally indistinguishable from the real front cover, but it's inside the magazine. If you don't read Bulgarian, you wouldn't know that that little red circle there says paid sponsorship. But what she did, she ripped the real front cover off and just sent this one to everybody. So it ended up in seminars in Uganda being flashed around saying, I know you guys don't read Bulgarian, but look, here she is on the front cover of Forbes magazine in Bulgaria. And then she does it again, even better, even bigger. She's actually speaking at an event hosted by The Economist magazine. And one of the reasons for that is that her company, OneCoin, was sponsoring a seminar that The Economist was hosting in Bulgaria. And they said, do not use this as part of your marketing material. She ignored that, obviously. The first thing she did after speaking there was to send a video out. And I spoke to dozens of people around the world who'd invested and lost all of their money in OneCoin, who'd said that seeing her with the Economist brand and with the Forbes brand next to her name and her face, they didn't get the tech, but they figured that this was the shortcut. So of course I'm going to trust it. But the single biggest thing of all, I think, I spent 3 years trying to work out how so many people could invest in what on the face of it does look like a fairly obvious Ponzi scheme. Why did so many people keep believing in this thing? And it might sound obvious, but it's, to me, the most powerful emotion of all, which is the simple fear of missing out. The fear that somebody else is getting rich, not because they're smarter than you, not because they've been more diligent in their research than you, but simply because they got in early on some smart tip. And this fear that people had missed out on this amazing opportunity of cryptocurrency meant all rational thought flew out of their head, because all they could dream about was what colour Bentley they would buy when finally their OneCoin would be turned into real money again. And so the projections of prices that the promoters were pushing all the time was, you're going to double, triple, quadruple your money. Guaranteed returns, in some cases it was promised, guaranteed returns of something like 10,000% in a year. And we may laugh and say that's ludicrous. Warren Buffett would say no more than 10%, that's great. But people didn't want 10%. Because they'd heard that Bitcoin had gone up. They'd heard a story that someone bought Bitcoin in 2010 and was now a millionaire. And it just drove this irrationality. People, the old-fashioned adage of, if it sounds too good to be true, then it probably is too good to be true, didn't really work, because everyone thought back to Bitcoin and thought, it's not fair. My mate Dave down the road, and he's an idiot, he's driving around in a Lamborghini now because he bought Bitcoin in 2011. So, you know what? 100% return in 2 days does actually sound plausible, and I don't want to miss it. And this fear of missing out, combined with what promoters of all scams do, which is push you on a time-sensitive way, make sure you think it's urgent, you have to invest in the next 2 hours or you're going to miss the boat, just meant people could not see past the obvious flaws in this project. And this, by the way, is the actual price of OneCoin, which they claimed was driven by the market. And I don't know if you notice anything slightly strange about that. It doesn't really look like a market to me. Certainly not an open market. But people who'd invested even knew this. But that fear of missing out was so powerful that they could ignore that. They could ignore the fact that this was a sponsored content. They could ignore the fact that people were saying this was a Ponzi scheme because they just wanted to be in early on the very next big thing. Okay, Dr. Ruja Ignatova herself. I think she's out there still. I'm not going to give too much away. In fact, I think what she would be doing right now is sitting down somewhere and she's plotting her next scam, because that's what these people do. They're just constantly working out, how can we make more money? What's the next big thing? And she's going to be thinking, what's the next big hyped up technology that everyone's really excited about, no one really understands, is making loads of money really, really quickly, and is not really clearly regulated. So regulators aren't quite sure what it is or how to control it, because that is the perfect combination of things. So the obvious place in which she's going to be looking, of course, is these non-fungible tokens. Now, as it happens, I quite think that non-fungible tokens, these NFTs, you've probably heard them called, the idea of sort of creating unique or scarce digital assets makes some sense. So many people now, all the things that they own, all the things that they've bought, the things they care about are digital in nature. People want things that are valuable and unique to them, and so it makes sense that they will want digital assets that are unique. I don't think that the fact you can take a photograph of it and then share it with other people devalues the notion of a unique digital asset, because I can get a perfect replica of the Mona Lisa in my bedroom, but it's not worth anything like the original. Probably to buy this thing, which was every day the first 500 days by a digital artist called Beeple for $69 million is a bit overpriced. And I'm sure there's a big shakeout, it's already underway, but the technology behind it's quite interesting and exciting. But Dr. Ruja's going to be thinking, great, another tech people don't get, that's fast moving, that the regulators are really confused by. This is going to be my next scam. You know what I'll do? I'll pay loads of YouTube influencers to talk this product up. But I might even go further. I might start using artificial, like machine-generated content, artificial humans, fake social media profiles, to start pumping up the buzz about these NFT products, which I'll then sell, promising a future guaranteed price, and I'll disappear again before that's realized. That's what she's going to be doing, because every single new technology that comes out, the first people are the brilliant tech creators, the second people are always the scam artists who are looking for ways to use it themselves. Now, I want to try and think a little bit further forward and give you how I can see online crime evolving in the next 5 to 10 years, a little bit further ahead. When I try and think about the sort of future of technology, I don't try and predict specific technologies, and you guys are all going to be far better technologists than I am, but I know quite a lot about how the criminal underworld works here. The two trends that seem to me to be really obvious and really important are really simple, and they're not really in much dispute. The first is that we are going to be generating an awful lot more data about ourselves through all sorts of different machines. Obviously, we're going to have loads of smart devices in the home. We all know deep down secretly that one day we are going to get up, go downstairs for a coffee and find out that our smart coffee machine has been hacked into and we've got to pay 5 Dogecoin to unlock it because it's been ransomed. And then we'll get in trouble with the police for having done that. And we're going to have loads of problems with our smart devices in our home, of course. But the more important thing is that more and more of the devices that we have is just going to generate more and more data about ourselves. So the data explosion. And the second thing is that computer speeds are going to continue to improve, and the cost of that is going to continue to decrease. That's pretty simple stuff. But I think just based on those two obvious trends, we can make a few relatively simple predictions about how online crime might work. But there's going to be loads of weird things going on as a result of this as well. Like, I've been trying to work out just how many data assets I will have when I die, if I die in 40 years' time. I've worked out that I'm going to have 250,000 WhatsApp messages at least. I wonder what are we going to do with all that stuff? I mean, like, print it all out, put it in a binder and give it to a library or something so people can research it one day? Who knows? What we do with our digital assets when we die, I think, is going to become one of the most pressing problems for so many of us in the next 20 years. And I've got this theory, like, digital legacy companies are going to become extremely important. And I'm planning to maybe ask someone to carry on managing all my digital accounts, maybe actually set up some basic machine learning stuff so I can carry on tweeting at people after I die, you know, like people I really don't like or stuff like that, because what can they do to me then? Just carry on in there with a forever online presence. So, I mean, like, there are studies that suggest that by 2060, there'll be more dead people on Facebook than living people. We're going to be walking around this like memorial site of social media platforms, of the few living, trying to find other living people because half of the population online is going to be dead. And it sounds ridiculous, but I don't think it is. No more ridiculous than had someone tried to tell you how Cambridge Analytica would work in an election in 2016. If someone had told you that a decade earlier, you thought they were completely crazy. So we're going to have all sorts of strange and interesting new things to do with this data explosion. But the thing that's going to affect crime the most is the same thing. It's one simple message. It's the same thing that's going to affect every other industry. Crime is increasingly getting automated and will become increasingly automated. Why wouldn't it? Criminals are basically lazy. They're the same as everybody else. They're very smart. They have conferences where they sit around, literally conferences where they sit around trying to figure out how can we make more money while doing less work. They're just like everybody else. And they don't have to worry about GDPR and all of that rubbish. Sorry, that's not rubbish. It's really important. Strike that from the record. But they don't have to worry about that stuff. They just got to sit around thinking, wow, there's this amazing new technology. How could we automate more of it so we could hack into more devices with less work and less effort? So if the future of crime is automated and based on far cheaper computing and far more data about all of us, imagine some of the scenarios. The one that makes most sense to me is we've all had they call it the Nigerian prince email. Would you just send me $5,000 for this short-term bridging loan and I'll give you $100,000 back? And you think, why would anyone ever fall for that? Well, they tried to use some of the same basic scamming techniques that Dr. Ruja used. But imagine those being combined with far more sophisticated data analytics tools where you can actually really personalize those kinds of spear phishing messages. So let's say a machine learning system was collecting all the data about your social interactions, where you ate, knew already about your kind of dietary habits, understood the sort of language that you responded to because it's based on 30, 50, 40, 60 years of interactions that you've posted about. Suddenly you're getting spear phishing emails from your local restaurant about the fact that you should have been here on Tuesday, but why have you changed it to Wednesday? Can we talk about whatever it happens to be? But those kinds of spear phishing emails would be sent automatically en masse to thousands of people immediately through the click of a button. Far harder for us as ordinary people to work out what to trust and what not to trust. You may have seen, it was about 5 years ago now, the hacking competitions between machines. They're still not as good as humans, but some analysts reckon that they're about where chess machines were in the early 1990s. Top 50, top 20. Not quite as good as humans, but getting there. But which means, if that's true, in 10, 20 years' time, most of the best hackers in the world would be machines. What does that mean for how we deal with this? Well, there's a couple of things, and these are my final words. The first is, I think the risk profile might start to change a little bit. I speak to a lot of small companies who always think, well, we're a tiny little company, no one's going to bother with us, no one's going to hack into us. But in a world of automated hacking, it's not really about being targeted. It's more about machines targeting weaknesses in software, in vulnerabilities. So everyone gets targeted. There was a good case recently of a security company setting up a fake accountancy firm and just leaving it online to see what would happen. Had all profiles and usernames, and it looked really legitimate. Within 2 hours, it had been found by another machine, a hacking machine, which within 15 seconds had hacked into it, collected all the user data, created its own profiles on the site, and was kind of ready to go, except the whole thing was a setup. So the risk profile starts to change, and more and different types of companies are affected. And the second is that obviously if more of the attack is automated, then so will more of the defense. We'll have machines squaring off against each other as one's trying to hack in, but obviously automated systems are trying to defend. But it's going to be so important that we are able to explain what's going on. As machines become more complicated and more decisions are made by machines, ordinary people want to understand how that works. And we can never be in a position where we can't explain in clear, simple language what's going on. And the final thing is preparation. In this kind of world of automated and more sophisticated hacking, I think everyone at some point is going to be breached. We've heard that so many times before. But I think the difference in the future will be that people will be less forgiving of companies that don't take basic steps to back things up and do all the basics properly. Nothing seems to annoy people more. Not when a company's hacked into, they understand that's almost inevitable, but when the company affected doesn't communicate it clearly with them, or doesn't seem to have a response plan in place, or didn't seem to have the sort of basics that you'd expect of encrypting everybody's personal information, and then sort of lie about it or sort of obscure what had happened. And in this kind of world where things become more automated, I just don't think that's going to be forgivable, especially not as more and more of us value the data that we put out there. So that's the future. I'm not that worried about it. 10 years ago, honestly, I was so scared because I wrote this book about the darknet, and I was absolutely convinced that everything was about to collapse. I was like, you just go on the darknet and just buy everyone's usernames and passwords. Like, we're screwed. We can't keep up. But the defense side of things has grown so quickly in response, and that's clearly what's going to happen now. But I hope that gives you a flavor of where I think this is going. And if anyone ever comes to you offering you an amazing cryptocurrency that's guaranteed to go up by 10,000% in 2 years, and you start thinking about how your friend bought that Lamborghini, because he just say, no, thank you, I'm fine. I'll wait it out. 10% a year is good enough for me. And with that, I think we've got time for a couple of questions, and thanks all very much for listening.
Hi, sorry, Mark Kern here. Really interesting presentation. One of the things I'm kind of interested about when you talk about the data explosion is the use of CBDCs in the coming years. So likely we're going to have central banks issue their own digital currencies. Are you worried about the use of data when that becomes a reality and we're using central bank like digital currencies over, say, cryptocurrencies or cash, for example, and that data is then centralized with government government in the end? Is that a worry of yours?
Probably less maybe than the current problem. I think you've seen already that for ordinary people who've invested in a lot of these quite speculative assets, their chief concern is they liked the idea of everything being decentralized and uncontrolled because of the sort of the distrust in large central banks and interest rates and governments manipulating interest rates. But then when things go wrong, which they always do, and it can be something as simple as a lost password, or like me, I had a very brief story. I had about $1 million worth of cryptocurrency stolen from me. It was just sitting in an exchange. I bought some ages ago for a project I was working on, kind of forgot about it, and then the exchange site got hacked into and disappeared. All the money had just vanished. It didn't really bother me that much because it cost me about £100 when I bought it. But I wanted to be able to go to some central authority and say, could you please get me my money back? And they were, but I'd invested in a speculative, decentralized, uncontrollable network that's irreversible. And that's the cost. But for ordinary people, if this starts becoming a real part of our everyday economic and social lives, insurance systems and sort of manageable ways of controlling accounts and forgetting passwords and what happens when things go wrong is going to require people to give up more of their personal information to manage that. OneCoin did so well because they said, we want passport identities for every user. We're going to do proper KYC checks. And if anyone steals your money, irony of irony, we'll make sure it's returned to your account because it's all centralized. And that was the opposite of Bitcoin. And ordinary people really liked that pitch. So I suspect they'll quite like the central bank pitch if it's based on security and traditional methods of controlling money. And in the end, if it is going to take off, it will probably require some of that stuff, and there'll be a trade-off, and there'll probably be a war, as there always has been with Bitcoin, between those who think it's a tool to overthrow the system and those who think it should be integrated into the existing financial system.
Okay, thank you so much, Jimmy Bartlett. Let's hear it for Jamie.
Thank you for having me.
Applause.